High above the clouds, where the earth touches the heavens, and ancient wisdom flows like mountain streams, stands a monastery that has weathered countless seasons. The sacred mountain monastery, known to the local villagers as Tianshanxi. The Temple of Celestial Peace rests upon a plateau carved by millennia of wind and rain into the granite peaks of the Himalayas. As twilight descends upon this sacred refuge, the last rays of golden sunlight dance across snow-capped peaks that pierce the evening sky like silent sentinels. The monastery itself appears to emerge organically from the mountain stone, its weathered wooden beams and slate roofs blending seamlessly with the natural contours of the cliff face. Ancient pines, their branches bent and twisted by decades of mountain winds, frame the temple buildings like calligraphy, brushstrokes against parchment sky. The main hall, with its gently curved roofline and intricate wooden carvings, houses a serene Buddha statue carved from a single piece of white jade. The statue's peaceful countenance reflects the eternal calm that permeates this sacred space, its half-closed eyes gazing inward toward infinite compassion. Soft butter lamps flicker before the altar, their warm glow casting dancing shadows that seem to breathe life into the carved lotus petals adorning the walls. In the courtyard, a small garden grows despite the harsh mountain climate. Here, hardy mountain flowers bloom in defiance of the thin air and bitter winds. Purple gentians, white edelweiss, and tiny alpine roses that seem to capture starlight in their petals. A stone path winds through this garden, worn smooth by generations of bare feet walking meditation. At the garden's center sits a simple stone basin where clear mountain water collects from a natural spring, its surface so still it mirrors the vast sky above. The monastery is home to 12 monks and 3 young novices, each having journeyed here from distant lands seeking the profound peace that only solitude and spiritual practice can provide. Master Jizang, the elderly abbot whose beard flows white as mountain snow, has tended this sacred space for over 40 years. His eyes, deep as mountain lakes, hold the wisdom of countless sunrises witnessed from these peaks. He moves through the monastery with the quiet grace of wind through bamboo, his presence bringing an immediate sense of tranquility to any space he enters. Young novice Tenzin, barely 16 years old, came to the monastery 3 summers ago, his heart heavy with questions about life's meaning. The mountain paths that led him here also led him away from a world of noise and distraction toward this sanctuary where silence speaks louder than words. Under Master Jizang's gentle guidance, Tenzin has learned that sweeping floors can be a form of prayer, that chopping vegetables can become meditation, and that the simple act of breathing can connect one to the infinite. Brother Sonam, a middle-aged monk whose previous life as a merchant taught him the weight of material possessions, now finds joy in the monastery's simple rhythms. Each morning before dawn, he rings the bronze bell that calls the community to meditation. The bell's voice carries across the mountain valleys, its resonant tone seeming to awaken not just the monks, but the mountains themselves. The daily routine at Sacred Mountain Monastery follows patterns established centuries ago, each activity infused with mindful attention and reverent care. At 4:30 a.m., before the first light touches the peaks, the bronze bell's gentle chime awakens the community for morning meditation. The monks gather in the main hall, their burgundy robes creating a circle of warmth against the cool mountain air. In perfect silence, they settle into lotus position, their breath creating small clouds in the crisp air as they begin their journey inward. The meditation hall fills with an almost tangible peace as 15 hearts beat in rhythm with the Mo Untain's ancient pulse. Outside, the world remains wrapped in pre-dawn darkness, but within these walls an inner light grows stronger with each mindful breath. The Buddha statue seems to glow more radiantly in the soft lamplight, as if responding to the collective energy of sincere practice. As the eastern sky begins to blush with rose and gold, the monks conclude their sitting meditation and transition into walking meditation. They file out into the courtyard in single formation, their feet moving slowly and deliberately across the stone path. Each step is placed with complete awareness, each breath synchronized with the eternal rhythm of mountain and sky. The walking meditation continues for exactly 108 steps, the sacred number representing the removal of suffering, before the monks return to the hall for chanting. The morning chants rise like incense into the thin mountain air, ancient Sanskrit syllables that have echoed through these halls for generations. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gone, 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 beyond gone, completely beyond awakening, so be it. The words carry prayers for all sentient beings, extending compassion from this mountain sanctuary to every corner of the world below. After morning practice, the monastery awakens to the gentle sounds of daily life. Brother Karma tends the small vegetable garden, coaxing hardy greens and root vegetables from the mountain soil. His weathered hands move among the plants with infinite tenderness, understanding that each seed contains the potential for nourishment and growth. The garden provides simple sustenance for the community, turnips, cabbage and barley that grow despite the short growing season and harsh conditions. In the kitchen, novice Dolma prepares the morning meal with the same reverence others might reserve for the most sacred rituals. She understands that cooking is an act of love, that each grain of rice, each cup of barley tea carries the intention to nourish not just the body, but the spirit. The kitchen fills with the warm aromas of toasted barley and yak butter tea, simple flavors that speak of comfort and home. The library, housed in a smaller building connected to the main hall by a covered walkway, contains scrolls and texts accumulated over centuries. Hand-copied sutras in Tibetan Sanskrit and Chinese fill wooden shelves, their pages yellowed with age, but their wisdom timeless. Here the monks spend hours in study, not seeking intellectual knowledge, but rather the deeper understanding that comes from applying ancient teachings to contemporary challenges. Master Jizang often says that the monastery serves as a mirror, reflecting back to each resident exactly what they need to see for their spiritual growth. The mountain's harsh beauty strips away pretense and ego, leaving only essential truth. The thin air demands deep breathing, teaching presence and awareness with each inhalation. The isolation removes external distractions, forcing one to see on front the noise and chaos within. As evening approaches and our tale begins, the monastery settles into its most peaceful rhythm. The day's work is complete, dinner has been shared in grateful silence, and the community prepares for the final meditation session before rest. Oil lamps are lit throughout the buildings, their warm glow creating pools of light that push back the mountain darkness. The evening sky above Sacred Mountain Monastery transforms into a canvas of deep purples and midnight blues, scattered with stars so bright and numerous they seem within reach. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a cosmic pathway, reminding all who gaze upward of their connection to something infinitely vast and mysterious. In this sacred space where earth meets sky and silence speaks volumes, the ancient wisdom of Zen Buddhism lives and breathes. Here simple tales become profound teachings, ordinary moments reveal extraordinary truths, and the path to enlightenment is found no in grand gestures, but in the gentle cultivation of awareness, compassion, and inner peace. This is where our journey begins, dear listener, in this sanctuary above the clouds, where every breath is a prayer and every moment an opportunity for awakening. In the tranquil depths of winter at sacred mountain monastery, when snow falls like whispered prayers and the world below disappears beneath a blanket of pristine white master, Jizang often gathers the community in the warm glow of the main hall to share ancient tales of wisdom. Tonight, as wind chimes sing softly in the mountain breeze and butter lamps cast dancing shadows on the weathered walls, he settles into his meditation cushion and begins one of the most beloved stories in all of Zen tradition. Listen well, dear ones. Master Jizang's voice carries the gentle authority of mountain streams. For tonight, I shall tell you of young Toyo and his teacher, the great Master Mokurai, whose name means silent thunder. This tale comes to us from the ancient temples of Japan, where centuries ago wisdom was passed from heart to heart through the most mysterious of questions. The monastery falls into perfect stillness, save for the soft crackling of burning incense and the distant howl of wind through the mountain passes. Even young novice Tenzin, usually restless during evening teachings, sits motionless as carved stone, his eyes reflecting the lamplight like pools of curiosity. In the temple of Kenninji, nestled among the bamboo groves of Kyoto, there lived a master renowned throughout the land for his profound understanding of the deepest mysteries. Master Mokurai moved through the temple grounds like silent thunder, his presence powerful yet gentle, his teachings striking like lightning yet warm as summer rain. Students came from across Japan to sit before him, hoping to glimpse the truth that seemed to flow from his very being. Master Jizang pauses, allowing his words to settle like snowflakes on still water. In the silence, the monastery seems to breathe with ancient rhythm, each beam and stone holding the weight of countless such gatherings, countless such stories shared in the sacred darkness of mountain nights. Among these students was a boy named Toyo, only 12 years old, whose heart burned with questions too large for his young mind to hold. Unlike the adult students who approached their teacher with careful reverence, Toyo possessed the directness of youth, the clarity that comes before the world teaches us to doubt our deepest knowing. Outside the monastery, windows, snow continues its eternal dance, each flake unique, yet part of an infinite whole. The image serves as a perfect metaphor for the individual nature of each seeker's journey, yet the universal truth that connects all spiritual questioning. Toyo had watched the older students receive their koans, those mysterious questions and statements that seem to defy logic, yet point directly toward enlightenment. He observed them struggling with puzzles like, what is the original face you had before your parents were born? And does a dog have Buddha nature? He saw how these enigmatic teachings could torment and transform, leading dedicated students through months or even years of contemplation before the moment of breakthrough arrived. The boy's eagerness reminds everyone present of their own spiritual hunger, that deep longing for understanding that draws souls to mountaintop monasteries and ancient teachings. Master Jizang's storytelling weaves this recognition through his listeners like a gentle current. One autumn evening, when maple leaves painted the temple grounds in shades of fire and gold, young Toyo approached Master Mokurai with the boldness that only innocence can muster. "Master," he said, bowing low, but unable to hide the excitement dancing in his eyes, "please give me a koan to solve. I wish to study Zen just like the older students." Master Mokurai regarded the boy with eyes deep as mountain lakes, seeing not just the eager child before him, but the ancient Buddha nature that dwelt within that small form. After a moment of contemplation, he spoke. "You can hear the sound of two hands when they clap together. Now show me the sound of one hand clapping." The koan hangs in the monastery air like a temple bell's resonance, its apparent impossibility creating a space where ordinary thinking must surrender to deeper understanding. Several of the listening monks smile with recognition, remembering their own first encounters with such paradoxical teachings. Toyo bowed gratefully and rushed away, his mind immediately beginning to work on this fascinating puzzle. Unlike many students who might approach such a question with scholarly analysis or philosophical speculation, Toyo's young mind sought practical solutions. "If there must be a sound of one hand," he reasoned, "then I must find it." That very evening, as lanterns began to flicker throughout the temple and the first stars appeared above the bamboo groves, Toyo made his way toward the geisha quarters of nearby Gion district. The narrow streets filled with the sounds of shamisen music and laughter, the artificial gaiety of entertainment floating through paper screens and wooden lattices. Master Jizang's voice grows softer, more intimate, drawing his listeners deeper into the story's embrace. The monastery walls seem to fade away, replaced by the ancient streets of Kyoto, where a determined boy sought wisdom in the most unexpected places. Toyo pressed his ear against the wall of a tea house where geishas entertained wealthy merchants and poets. Inside, he heard the delicate plinking of shamisen strings, the rustle of silk kimonos, and the tinkling laughter of accomplished entertainers. "Surely this is the sound of one hand," he thought with excitement. The music seemed to flow from a single source like water from a mountain spring. The next morning, filled with confidence, Toyo presented himself before Master Mokurai. "Master, I have found it. The sound of one hand is the music of the geishas." He waited expectantly for praise, for acknowledgement of his cleverness in solving such a difficult puzzle. But Master Mokurai merely shook his head with gentle kindness. No, he said quietly. "That is not the sound of one hand. You will have to find something else." The master's rejection was delivered without harshness, yet it struck Toyo like a mountain avalanche, burying his certainty beneath disappointment and confusion. The setback resonates through the monastery hall, reminding each listener of their own spiritual frustrations, those moments when apparent understanding crumbles under the scrutiny of deeper wisdom. Yet, in Master Jizang's telling, even failure becomes a necessary step on the path to genuine insight. Undeterred by this initial failure, young Toyo expanded his search. For days, he wandered through Kyoto, his ears attuned to every sound, his mind analyzing each auditory experience as a potential answer to his master's impossible question. He listened to the wind whistling through bamboo groves, thinking perhaps this was the sound of one hand moving through space. He sat by temple streams, convinced that the babbling of water over stones might hold the secret he sought. He crept close to monastery kitchens, wondering if the rhythmic chopping of vegetables by a single cook might represent the elusive sound. Each discovery filled him with temporary hope. Each presentation to Master Mokurai ended in the same gentle rejection. The wind through bamboo is not the sound of one hand, the master would say. The stream's voice is not what I seek. The kitchen sounds are still two hands working. The hand and the knife, the hand and the cutting board. As weeks turned to months in the story, Toyo's search became increasingly desperate and creative. Master Jizang describes how the boy listened to everything from crying babies to chirping crickets, from temple bells to his own heartbeat, each time convinced he had solved the impossible riddle, each time gently corrected by his patient teacher. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing Keninji Temple in snow, much like the white silence that surrounds us here tonight. Master Jizang gestures toward the monastery windows, where snowflakes continue their eternal dance. Toyo had been working on his koan for nearly a year, his initial enthusiasm tempered by countless failures, yet transformed into something deeper, a genuine spiritual hunger that had nothing to do with solving clever puzzles. It was during one of these cold winter evenings, as Toyo sat in meditation, facing yet another day of fruitless searching, that something shifted within his young consciousness. The question itself began to change. Instead of asking, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" he found himself asking, "Who is the one seeking this sound? What is the nature of sound itself? What is the hand that seeks to make this impossible sound?" The story reaches its crucial turning point, and Master Jizang's voice drops to barely above a whisper, forcing his listeners to lean forward to enter more deeply into the contemplative space he has created. Outside, even the wind seems to pause, as if all of nature waits for the moment of revelation. The next morning, Toyo approached Master Mokurai for what would be the final time with an external answer. But something in the boy's demeanor had changed. Gone was the eager confidence of youth, replaced by a deeper quietude, a stillness that seemed to emanate from his very bones. "Master Toyo," said, and his voice carried a quality that made Mokurai look up from his morning tea with sharp attention. "I have understood the sound of one hand clapping." And here the boy fell silent, not because he had no answer, but because he had found the answer that exists beyond all answers. In that silence, not empty, but full, not absent, but completely present, Master Mokurai heard what he had been waiting for his student to discover. The koan was not about producing a sound at all. It was about understanding the nature of seeking itself, about discovering the consciousness that asks the question, about finding the stillness that exists before and after all sounds arise and pass away. "Yes," said Master Mokurai, and his single word carried the weight of mountains, the depth of oceans, the vastness of sky. "Now you have heard the sound of one hand clapping." Master Jizang allows the story's conclusion to rest in silence, letting its deeper meanings permeate the consciousness of his listeners like incense smoke drifting through sacred space. The monastery feels charged with understanding each person present touched by the recognition of their own seeking their own journey from external answers toward internal wisdom. This tale teaches us, Master Jizang continues softly, that the deepest quest irons cannot be answered with cleverness or information. They require a fundamental shift in the questioner themselves. Young Toyo discovered that the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of silence itself. Not empty silence, but the pregnant silence from which all sounds arise and to which they return. As the teaching concludes and the community prepares for final meditation before sleep, the story of Toyo and Master Mokurai settles into each heart like a seed planted in fertile ground. The mountain wind carries away the spoken words, but the essential teaching remains as permanent and enduring as the snow-capped peaks that shelter this sacred refuge. In the growing silence of mountain night, perhaps each listener discovers their own version of the sound of one hand clapping, the sound of a heart beating in rhythm with infinite compassion, the sound of breath moving in harmony with universal life, the sound of consciousness recognizing its own boundless nature. The profound silence that followed Master Jitsang's tale seemed to wrap around the monastery like a living presence. In this sacred pause where words had ceased but understanding continued to unfold, the assembled monks and novices experienced what young Toyo himself must have felt in that transformative moment with Master Mokurai. The butter lamps flickered gently, their warm light dancing across weathered faces marked by years of contemplation and practice. But the story does not end there. Master Jisang continued, his voice now carrying the quality of distant thunder rolling across mountain valleys. For true understanding, like the mountain streams that flow beneath winter ice, continues to move and deepen even when it appears still on the surface. Young Toyo's realization was not a destination, but a doorway, not an ending, but a beginning of even more profound discovery. Outside the monastery, window snow continued its eternal dance, each flake a perfect mandala dissolving the moment it would shed the earth. This image served as a living metaphor for the insights Master Jisang was about to share, each understanding perfect in itself, yet part of an endless flow of wisdom that never truly settles into fixed form. In the days following his breakthrough, Toyo noticed that everything in the temple had changed, though not a single stone had been moved, not a single beam replaced. The same bamboo groves rustled in the same winds, the same temple bells rang at the same hours, the same incense burned before the same altars. Yet, somehow everything appeared completely new, as if he was seeing through different eyes entirely. This transformation reminds us that enlightenment does not alter the external world, but reveals the true nature of what was always present. The sound of one hand clapping was never hidden. It was Toyo's understanding that needed to mature like fruit ripening on an ancient tree. Young novice Tenzin, who had been sitting in perfect stillness throughout the tale, felt a stirring of recognition in his chest. His own journey to the monastery had been marked by similar moments of seeking similar frustrations when external answers failed to satisfy the deeper questions burning within his heart. Master Mokurai-wise, in the ways of nurturing spiritual growth, did not shower Toyo with praise or declare his training complete. Instead, he simply said, "Now your real education begins. You have learned to hear the sound that exists beyond sound. Next, you must learn to see the sight that exists beyond seeing, to know the knowledge that exists beyond knowing." This response teaches us that spiritual realization is not a trophy to be won, but a capacity to be cultivated. Like a mountain spring that flows continuously, enlightenment is not a destination we reach, but a way of being we embody more fully with each passing day. Master Jisang gestured toward the altar where the jade Buddha sat in eternal meditation, its serene countenance unchan-gayed by centuries of prayers and offerings? Notice how our Buddha statue neither celebrates success nor mourns failure. It simply embodies the perfect balance that exists beyond all dualistic thinking. This is the state young Toyo began to touch through his koan practice. In traditional Zen teaching, the koan serves as a spiritual medicine designed to cure specific ailments of the mind. For Toyo, whose young intelligence was quick and eager, the medicine was designed to exhaust his reliance on cleverness and analysis. Only when his conceptual mind reached complete exhaustion could his deeper wisdom emerge. The monastery cat, a grey tabby named Dharma, who had wandered into the hall during the story, now curled up near the altar with complete unself-consciousness. Master Jizang smiled at this perfect demonstration of natural Buddha nature. The cat neither sought enlightenment nor worried about losing it, but simply existed in perfect harmony with the present moment. Animals are teachers in this regard, Master Jizang observed. Watch how Dharma neither clings to comfort nor pushes away discomfort. She embodies the sound of one hand clapping in every purr, every stretch, every moment of alert relaxation. She demonstrates what Toyo discovered, that the answer we seek is not separate from the seeker. But let us return to young Toyo's continuing education. Master Mokurai, understanding that genuine insight must be tested and refined through daily life, assigned his student increasingly challenging practices. If you truly understand the sound of one hand, the master said, then show me this understanding as you sweep the temple grounds, as you serve tea to visitors, as you sit in morning meditation. This instruction reveals a crucial aspect of Zen training often misunderstood by casual students. The moment of breakthrough, profound as it may be, is only the beginning of integrating that understanding into every aspect of life. Toyo now faced the greater challenge of living his realization rather than simply experiencing it. For weeks, Toyo practiced bringing the awareness he had discovered during his koan work into each mundane activity. When sweeping leaves from the temple courtyard, he would pause periodically to listen for that soundless sound, to reconnect with the stillness that had opened during his months of seeking. When preparing meals in the temple kitchen, he would notice how each chop of the knife arose from and returned to the same essential silence. Gradually, the distinction between practice time and regular time began to dissolve. Toyo discovered that the sound of one hand clapping was not something to be accessed only during formal meditation or koan study, but the very ground of awareness itself, always present, requiring only recognition rather than achievement. Brother Sonam, listening from his place near the monastery's ancient wooden pillar, felt his own understanding deepen as Master Jizang spoke. His own journey from merchant to monk had involved a similar process of learning to find the sacred within the ordinary, the profound within the simple. Master Mokurai watched his young student with the patient eye of a gardener observing a seedling's growth. He noticed how Toyo's initial excitement about his realization gradually matured into a quieter confidence. How the boy's need to talk about his understanding transformed into a more natural embodiment of wisdom. One spring morning, as cherry blossoms painted the temple grounds in clouds of pink and white, Master Mokurai posed a new question to his student. "Toyo," he said, "you have found the sound of one hand clapping. Now tell me, what is the color of wind?" This second koan built upon the first challenging Toyo to apply his hard-won understanding to an entirely new domain. The question seemed equally impossible. Wind has no color, just as one hand cannot clap. Yet, Toyo had learned that impossible questions often point toward impossible truths that can only be lived rather than explained. Without the desperate seeking that had characterized his approach to the first koan, Toyo received this new challenge with a kind of playful curiosity. He had learned that the value of a koan lies not in solving it like a puzzle, but in allowing it to work upon consciousness like water gradually reshaping stone. Days passed as Toyo contemplated the color of wind. He observed how wind made visible things dance, leaves trembling on branches, grass bending in waves across temple meadows, prayer flags snapping against clear mountain air. He noticed how wind carried the colors of whatever it touched, the green of pine needles, the gold of autumn maples, the white of fresh snow. But still, these observations felt like external answers to a question that demanded internal recognition. Toyo remembered his earlier mistake of trying to locate the sound of one hand in the external world, and recognized that the ko-law of wind must be discovered in the same space where soundless sound had revealed itself. One evening, as Toyo sat in meditation facing the setting sun, a gentle breeze stirred the temple courtyard. As he felt the wind on his face, something shifted in his perception. The wind was not separate from his sensing of it, just as the sound of one hand was not separate from his listening. In that moment of recognition, the wind's color became as obvious as his own breath. The next morning, Toyo presented himself before Master Mokurai with the same quality of presence that had marked his breakthrough with the first koan. This time, however, he offered no words at all. Instead, he simply stood before his teacher and breathed, not demonstrating breathing, but being the living expression of breath moving through awareness. Master Mokurai nodded with deep satisfaction. "Yes," he said. "Now you see the color of wind." The student had learned to respond to impossible questions, not with clever answers, but with authentic being, not with explanations, but with embodiment. As Master Jizang's tale drew toward its close, the monastery seemed to settle even more deeply into the mountain's embrace. The wind outside had grown gentler, and the snowfall had transformed from individual flakes into a soft, continuous whisper against the windows. Young Toyo's training continued for many years under Master Mokurai's guidance, each new koan revealing deeper layers of the same essential truth. He learned that every genuine spiritual question is ultimately the same question asked from different angles. Who are you when all concepts of yourself fall away? What remains when all ideas about reality dissolve? What is your original face before thinking creates the illusion of separation? Eventually, Toyo himself became a teacher, carrying forward the lineage of wisdom that had transformed his own understanding. Students would come to him, seeking solutions to the same impossible questions that had once tormented and liberated him. To each sincere seeker, he would offer the same medicine that Master Mokurai had provided, not answers but opportunities for direct recognition of their own inherent wisdom. The story of Toyo and Master Mokurai teaches us that the spiritual path requires both the innocence of a child and the patience of a mountain. We must be willing to seek with complete sincerity while simultaneously releasing all attachment to finding. We must approach the deepest questions with both urgency and timelessness, both passion and equanimity. Master Jizang's voice grew softer now, preparing his listeners for the transition from story to sleep, from teaching to rest. As you prepare for sleep tonight, dear ones, perhaps you too can listen for the sound of one hand clapping. Not with your ears, but with your whole being. Not seeking to grasp something exotic, but recognizing what is most intimate and familiar. Let your breathing become like young Toyo's final answer. Not a demonstration, but an embodiment. Not a performance, but a natural expression of life living itself. In the space between inhalation and exhalation, in the pause between heartbeats, in the stillness that underlies all movement, the sound of one hand clapping reveals itself as the very ground of your own being. The monastery fell into complete silence as Master Jizang's teaching concluded. Each person present carried within them now both the story of young Toyo's journey and the living possibility of their own breakthrough. Like seeds planted in the fertile darkness of mountain night, these teachings would continue to work their mysterious transformation long after the words themselves had faded into memory. Outside, the snow continued falling, each flake unique, yet part of an infinite whole, each moment of its descent perfect yet impermanent. In this natural display of the very truths Toyo had discovered, the mountain itself became a teacher, and the night became a meditation hall vast as the sky. As the mountain wind settled into a gentle whisper, and the last echoes of Master Jizang's tale about young Toyo faded into the monastery's sacred silence, the assembled community remained in deep contemplation. The butter lamps flickered with renewed brightness, their golden flames dancing like tiny prayers ascending toward the ancient wooden beams overhead. In this profound stillness, where the boundary between story and reality seemed to dissolve, Master Jizang prepared to share another jewel from the treasury of Zen wisdom. Dear ones, his voice emerged from the silence like the first note of a temple bell. Tonight, the mountain winds carry to us another tale of awakening, one that speaks to the very heart of what it means to see clearly for the first time. This is the story of Chiyono-ni, a nun whose moment of enlightenment arrived not through years of study or complex meditation techniques, but through the simple breaking of a water pi L under the light of the full moon. The monastery seemed to lean inward, as if the very walls were eager to hear this beloved teaching once again. Young novice Tenzin pulled his woolen robe closer around his shoulders, not from cold, but from anticipation, sensing that this story would touch something deep within his own seeking heart. Many centuries ago, in the mountain regions of Japan, where misty valleys hold ancient temples, like cupped hands holding dewdrops, there lived a woman whose spiritual hunger burned as bright as any flame ever kindled on a monastery altar. Her name was Chiyono, and though she had been born into a family of means and comfort, her heart yearned for something that no worldly possession could satisfy. Master Jizang gestured toward the monastery's simple altar, where offerings of mountain flowers rested before the jade Buddha statue. Like many sincere seekers throughout history, Chiyono recognized early in life that the temporary pleasures and securities of conventional existence could never quench the deep thirst for truth that stirred within her soul. At the age of 25, despite her family's protests and society's expectations, she took vows as a Buddhist nun and entered a convent dedicated to the practice of Zen meditation. The wind outside began to sing through the monastery's prayer flags, creating a soft percussion that seemed to accompany Master Jizang's storytelling. The sound evoked images of ancient Japan, where dedicated practitioners sought enlightenment in mountain retreats, much like their own sacred mountain monastery. The convent where Chiyono took up residence was renowned throughout the region for the sincerity of its practice and the wisdom of its abbess, an elderly nun named Miori, whose understanding of the Dharma had been refined through 40 years of unwavering dedication. Under Miori's guidance, Chiyono threw herself into the demanding routine of monastic life with the same intensity that mountain streams rush toward the valley floor. Each day began before dawn with sitting meditation in the unheated meditation hall, where the nuns would gather in perfect silence to face the darkness within and without. Chiyono would settle onto her cushion with determination, her back straight as a mountain pine, her breath flowing in rhythm with the ancient chants that had echoed through these halls for generations. Brother Karma, listening from his place near the monastery's ancient wooden pillar, felt a deep resonance with this description. His own early years of practice had been marked by similar intensity, similar determination to force enlightenment through sheer effort and willpower. But, despite her sincere efforts and unwavering commitment, enlightenment seemed to elude Chiyono like moonbeams slipping through grasping fingers. Years passed in this way, years of faithful practice, years of following every instruction, years of hoping that the next retreat, the next koan, the next intensive meditation session would finally grant her the breakthrough she so desperately sought. Chiyono studied the classical texts with scholarly precision, memorizing sutras and commentaries until she could recite them perfectly. She engaged in ceremonial practices with meticulous attention to detail, ensuring that every bow, every offering, every ritual gesture was performed exactly as tradition prescribed. She practiced breathing techniques and visualization exercises with the dedication of a master craftsman perfecting a precious work of art. Yet, for all her efforts, the profound peace and understanding that she witnessed in her teacher Miri remained tantalizingly out of reach. Chiyono began to wonder if perhaps she lacked some essential quality needed for spiritual realization, if perhaps her karma from previous lifetimes created obstacles too great for this incarnation to overcome. Master Jizang paused here, allowing the weight of Chiyono's struggle to settle into the consciousness of his listeners. Many of them had experienced similar frustrations in their own practice, similar periods when effort seemed to create more obstacles than it removed. Abbess Muori, wise in the ways of spiritual guidance, observed her students' growing frustration with the compassionate eye of a mother watching a child struggle to walk. She recognized that Chiyono's very intensity had become a barrier, that her grasping for enlightenment was like trying to catch water in a clenched fist. The tighter the grip, the more quickly the treasure flows away. One autumn evening, as maple leaves painted the convent grounds in shades of fire and gold, Mirai called Chiyono to her chambers for private instruction. The older nun poured tea from a simple clay pot, her movements embodying the graceful efficiency that comes from decades of mindful practice. "My dear student," Mirai said gently, "I have watched you practice with admirable dedication for these many years. Your commitment to the path is beyond question, your sincerity obvious to all who know you. Yet, I sense that you are carrying a burden that prevents you from receiving the very gift you seek so earnestly." Chiyono bowed respectfully, but felt her heart sink. She had hoped for encouragement, perhaps a new meditation technique, or a powerful koan that would finally unlock the doors of realization. Instead, her teacher seemed to be pointing toward yet another obstacle, another failing in her spiritual character. Abbess Mayuri continued with infinite kindness. The Buddha nature that you seek to realize is not something that can be earned through effort or achieved through accumulation. It is not a prize to be won or a state to be attained. It is your very essence, as natural to you as wetness is to water, as brightness is to fire. But how can I realize this Buddha nature if not through practice? Chiono asked, her voice carrying years of confusion and longing. How can I experience this enlightenment that seems so clear to you, yet remains invisible to me? The wise abbess smiled with the gentle radiance of dawn breaking over mountain peaks. Perhaps, she suggested, it is time for you to stop trying so hard to find what was never lost. Perhaps it is time to simply live each moment with complete presence, without agenda, without grasping for anything beyond what is naturally arising right now. Following her teacher's guidance, Chiono began to approach her practice with a lighter touch. Instead of sitting meditation with the intensity of a warrior preparing for battle, she learned to settle into stillness, the way autumn leaves settle onto still water, naturally, effortlessly, without forcing or striving. She continued her daily responsibilities within the convent community, but now these activities became opportunities for presence rather than stepping stones towards some future attainment. When sweeping the temple floors, she focused completely on the rhythm of the broom, the sensation of her feet on the wooden planks, the pattern of light and shadow moving across the swept surfaces. When preparing meals in the convent kitchen, Chiono gave her full attention to each gesture. The sound of the knife against the cutting board, the texture of vegetables beneath her fingers, the steam rising from pots of simmering rice. These simple activities, performed with complete awareness, began to reveal depths of meaning that scholarly study had never touched. Young novice Dolma, who spent much of her time in the monastery kitchen, felt a spark of recognition at this description. She had experienced similar moments when cooking became meditation, when the simple preparation of food opened doorways to profound understanding. Months passed in this gentler mode of practice. Chiono noticed that her anxiety about enlightenment began to fade, replaced by a growing appreciation for the inherent completeness of each moment. She still longed for deeper understanding, but this longing no longer carried the desperate edge that had characterized her earlier years of seeking. One evening in late spring, when the moon hung full and luminous above the convent walls, Chiono was returning from the well where she had gone to draw water for the evening tea ceremony. The ancient wooden bucket, worn smooth by countless hands and filled to the brim with clear spring water, swayed gently on its rope as she walked slowly along the moonlit path. The night was absolutely still, so quiet that she could hear her own footsteps on the gravel path, so clear that the full moon's reflection in her water bucket appeared as vivid and perfect as the celestial orb itself hanging in the star-scattered sky above. As Chiono walked, she found herself contemplating this reflected moon, marveling at how something so far away could appear so intimately present in her simple bucket of water. The boundary between the moon in the sky and the moon in the water seemed to dissolve, leaving only in seamless unity of light, reflecting light awareness, recognizing awareness. She was so absorbed in this contemplation that she failed to notice a small root that had grown across the path. Her foot caught on this natural obstacle, and suddenly she was stumbling forward, the precious bucket flying from her hands to crash against a large stone at the path's edge. The sound of splintering wood shattered the night's perfect silence. Water cascaded across the ground in a silver shower, carrying with it the moon's reflection, which scattered into countless tiny lights before disappearing entirely into the thirsty earth. Master Jizang's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, and every person in the monastery leaned forward, slightly drawn into the pivotal moment of the story. Even Dharma the cat seemed to pause in her grooming, as if sensing the profound significance of what was about to unfold. In that instant, the instant when the bucket broke, when the water spilled, when the moon's reflection vanished, something profound shifted in Chiono's consciousness. Standing there in the moonlight, with wooden fragments at her feet and wet earth dark beneath her sandals, she suddenly understood what her teacher had been trying to show her through all those years of gentle guidance. The moon that had been reflected so perfectly in her bucket of water was never actually in the bucket at all. It had always remained exactly where it belonged, in the vast sky above. The reflection was real, but it was not the moon itself. And now that the bucket was broken and the water spilled, the moon continued to shine with exactly the same brilliance as before. In that moment of recognition, Chiono saw through the illusion that had driven her seeking for so many years. The Buddha nature she had been trying so desperately to attain was like the moon itself, always present, always perfect, never actually contained in the temporary vessels of practice, study, or effort that she had mistaken for the real treasure. Standing there beneath the infinite sky, with broken wood at her feet and moonlight streaming down like liquid silver, Chiono laughed with the spontaneous joy of someone who has just discovered that they had been frantically searching for the glasses that were sitting on their nose all along. The sound of her laughter rang through the night air, pure and free, as temple bells carried on mountain wind. In that moment, all the years of striving, all the frustration and doubt, all the complicated practices and sophisticated techniques revealed themselves as beautiful but ultimately unnecessary decorations on the simple fact of her own inherent awakeness. Later, when asked to describe her enlightenment experience, Chiono composed a poem that became one of the most beloved verses in all of Zen literature. No water in the pail, no moon in the water, darkness everywhere, and nothing else. This simple verse captures the essence of her realization perfectly. When the illusory moon in the water disappeared, when the temporary container broke apart, when all the objects of grasping were suddenly absent, in that apparent darkness, the eternal light of consciousness revealed itself as never having been dependent on any external conditions whatsoever. The monastery fell into profound silence as Master Jizang's story reached its conclusion. Outside clouds had begun to drift across the real moon hanging above Sacred Mountain Monastery, creating a perfect visual metaphor for the teaching just shared. The moon's light continued to shine with unwavering brilliance, whether visible or hidden, whether reflected in still pools or shining free in the open sky. Chiono's story teaches us, Master Jizang continued softly, that enlightenment is not something we create through our efforts, but something we discover was always already present. Like the moon in the sky, our true nature shines continuously, whether reflected in the temporary vessels of our thoughts and experiences, or standing free and unobstructed in the vast space of pure awareness. The broken bucket represents the shattering of our illusions about what we need to acquire or achieve in order to be complete. The spilled water represents the flowing away of all our accumulated concepts and strategies for becoming enlightened. And in that apparent loss, that seeming failure, the eternal treasure reveals itself as never having been absent for even a single moment. Brother Sonam felt tears gathering in his eyes as he recognized his own journey reflected in Chiono's story. His years as a merchant accumulating wealth and possessions had been like filling bucket after bucket with reflected moonlight, never recognizing that the true treasure shone freely in the sky of his own awareness. As you prepare for sleep tonight, dear friends, perhaps you too can experience something of Chionu's liberation. Instead of carrying the heavy bucket of trying to achieve some special state of consciousness, see if you can simply rest in the awareness that is already here, already awake, already perfect just as it is. Let your breathing be like the gentle lapping of water in a pail, natural, effortless, requiring no special technique or control. Let your thoughts come and go like clouds drifting across the moon's face, not obstacles to be removed, but temporary appearances in the vast sky of your own being. And if somewhere in the night your mental bucket breaks, if your carefully constructed sense of needing to get somewhere or achieve something suddenly falls apart, perhaps you too will laugh with Chiono's joy as you realize that what you were seeking was never actually contained in any bucket at all. The moon of your true nature shines tonight, as it has always shone, as it will always shine. Not because of your efforts, but as the very source from which all efforts arise. No water in the pail, no moon in the water, and yet the light of infinite awareness illuminates everything, including the very one who thinks they need to find it. As Master Jizang's teaching concluded, the monastery settled into the deepest silence yet experienced this evening. Each person present felt touched by the simplicity and profundity of Chiono's realization, sensing how the ancient nun's breakthrough spoke directly to their own contemporary seeking and striving. The real moon outside continued its eternal journey across the star-filled sky, its light streaming through the monastery windows to create patterns of silver and shadow on the worn wooden floors. In this natural display of unobstructed luminosity, the truth of Chiono's poem lived and breathed, offering its timeless teaching to anyone with eyes to see and hearts open to receive the gift of their own inherent completeness. As the profound silence following Chiono's tale gradually gave way to the gentle sounds of mountain night, the soft Warin Ispa of wind through pine branches, the distant tinkle of prayer flags, the almost inaudible breathing of the assembled community. Master Jizang remained perfectly still on his meditation cushion. His weathered hands rested peacefully in his lap, and his eyes reflected the dancing light of butter lamps like ancient pools holding starlight. The monastery seemed suspended between earth and sky, in this moment its stone walls and wooden beams serving as a bridge between the material world of daily tasks and the infinite realm of spiritual understanding. It was in this liminal space where the ordinary and the sacred merged like streams flowing into a vast ocean that Master Jizang prepared to share another jewel from the treasury of Zen wisdom. My dear friends, his voice emerged from the stillness with the gentle authority of mountains themselves. Tonight, we have heard of young Toyo's discovery that enlightenment cannot be grasped through cleverness, and of Nanchiono's realizatio, and that our true nature was never actually lost. Now, let me share with you a tale that reveals how the most ordinary activities of daily life can become doorways to the most extraordinary understanding. Young novice Tenzin felt a particular stirring of interest at these words. His days at the monastery were filled with exactly such ordinary activities: sweeping floors, chopping vegetables, carrying water from the mountain spring. Often he wondered when these mundane tasks would give way to real spiritual practice, when he would finally move beyond basic maintenance duties to the profound meditation and study he imagined comprised authentic Zen training. Long ago in the mountains of China, where mist clings to ancient peaks like incense smoke around temple altars, there lived a Zen master whose reputation for wisdom drew students from across the vast empire. Master Yunmen was known not for performing miracles or delivering elaborate lectures, but for his extraordinary ability to reveal the Buddha nature that dwelt within the most simple and common experiences. His temple, much like our own sacred mountain monastery, maintained itself through the dedicated labor of its residents. Unlike the grand imperial monasteries, where wealthy patrons provided everything needed for comfortable study, Yunmen's temple required each monk to contribute daily to the practical work of survival. Growing food, maintaining buildings, preparing meals, and managing the countless small tasks that allow a spiritual community to flourish. Master Jizang gestured toward the monastery's ancient wooden beams overhead, pointing out the careful craftsmanship that had sheltered generations of seekers. Just as these very walls were built by hands devoted to both manual labor and spiritual cultivation, so Master Yunmen's temple embodied the understanding that there is no separation between working with our hands and working with our hearts, between caring for material needs and nurturing spiritual growth. Brother Karma, who had spent the morning hours tending the monastery's small garden despite the early winter cold, felt a deep resonance with this teaching. His weathered hands still carried the memory of today's work, the solid resistance of frozen earth, the careful placement of protective coverings over delicate plants, the simple satisfaction of tasks completed with full attention. Among Master Yunmen's students was a young monk named Fa Shan, whose background in scholarly study had filled his mind with sophisticated concepts about enlightenment, but left his hands soft and unaccustomed to physical work. Fa Shan had memorized countless sutras, could debate the finer points of Buddhist philosophy with impressive erudition, and had developed considerable skill in formal meditation practices. However, when it came time for work assignments, Fa Shan would inevitably request duties he considered more suitable to his spiritual development. Maintaining the library, copying texts, or assisting with ceremonial functions. He viewed physical labor as a distraction from real practice, a necessary burden that unfortunately interrupted his pursuit of higher understanding. Master Yunmen observed his scholarly student with the patient eye of a master gardener watching a seed that refuses to sprout. He recognized that Fa Shan's very intelligence had become a barrier, that his concepts about spiritual development were preventing him from recognizing the enlightenment available in each moment of ordinary activity. The wind outside the monastery shifted direction, causing the prayer flags to dance with renewed vigor. Their colorful forms moved in perfect response to forces beyond their control, embodying a teaching about surrendering to circumstances while maintaining essential dignity and purpose. One autumn morning, when golden leaves carpeted the temple grounds and the air carried the crisp promise of approaching winter, Master Yunmen approached Fash and, with a simple request, "Today you will join Brother Kensho in chopping firewood for the winter stores. The work begins at dawn and continues until the daily quota is complete." Fashan's face immediately displayed his disappointment. "Master," he said with barely concealed frustration, "surely my time would be better spent in meditation or study. I have been working on a particularly challenging koan, and I feel I am close to a breakthrough. Could not someone else handle this manual labor while I pursue deeper practice?" Master Yunmen's response was delivered with the kind of gentle firmness that characterizes truly skillful teaching. "My dear student, today your koan is the woodpile, your meditation hall is the forest, your sutra is the song of the axe as it splits each log. If you cannot find enlightenment in chopping wood, then you have not yet understood what enlightenment actually is." Young novice Dolma, listening from her place near the monastery, Kitchen smiled with recognition. Her own teacher had given her similar guidance when she first arrived, frustrated that kitchen duties seemed to interfere with her meditation schedule. Only gradually had she discovered that preparing food with complete attention could be as profound a spiritual practice as any formal sitting meditation. Reluctantly, Fashan joined Brother Kensho at the woodpile as the first light of dawn painted the mountain peaks in shades of rose and gold. Kensho, a simple monk whose understanding ran deep as mountain springs, welcomed his scholarly companion with warmth, despite Fashan's obvious reluctance to be there. "The secret to chopping wood," Kensho explained, as he selected the first log and positioned it carefully on the splitting stump, "is to work with the grain rather than against it. Each piece of wood will show you exactly where it wants to split if you look carefully and listen closely." Fashan picked up his axe with the awkward grip of someone unaccustomed to such 2Ls. His first swing landed off-center, producing a dull thud rather than the clean crack that accompanied Kensho's effortless strokes. The log remained stubbornly intact, while Fashan's shoulders already ached from the unfamiliar exertion. "I am wasting my time here," Fashan muttered under his breath. "While I struggle with this crude labor, other students are advancing in their understanding through proper meditation practice. Master Yunmen has assigned me this task as some kind of punishment for my intellectual approach to Dharma study." But Brother Kensho overheard these complaints and responded with the patient kindness of someone who had walked this same path many years before. "Brother Fashan, may I suggest a different way of understanding today's work? Instead of seeing this as an interruption to your spiritual practice, consider the possibility that this is your spiritual practice perfectly designed for exactly what you need to learn right now. How can chopping wood possibly compare to meditation or koan study?" Fashan asked, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow despite the cool morning air. "These are just logs that need to be split so the temple stays warm. There is nothing profound or enlightening about such mundane activity." Kensho set down his axe and faced his frustrated companion with eyes full of compassion. "Tell me, Brother Fashan, when you sit in meditation, what are you seeking to achieve? When you study koans, what understanding are you hoping to gain?" I seek to realize my Buddha nature, Fashan replied immediately. I want to experience the enlightenment that the masters write about, to understand the true nature of reality beyond the illusions of ordinary perception. And do you imagine, Kensho asked gently, that your Buddha nature is present only when you are sitting on a meditation cushion? Do you believe that the true nature of reality reveals itself only in formal study, but somehow disappears when you pick up an AX or carry water from the well? This question hung in the mountain air like the sound of a temple bell, its implications rippling outward through Fashan's consciousness like waves spreading across a still pond. For the first time since beginning his work assignment, the scholarly monk paused to actually consider what his companion was suggesting. But surely, Fashan protested, though with less conviction than before. There must be a difference between mundane work and spiritual practice. Otherwise, why would we have special times for meditation, special places for ceremony, special teachings handed down through the lineage of masters? Brother Kensho smiled with the gentle radiance that comes from understanding discovered through direct experience rather than intellectual analysis. The meditation hall serves as a training ground where we learn to recognize our own natural awareness. The ceremonies provide structure within which we can practice gratitude and reverence. The tea akings offer guidance for recognizing truth. But none of these things create Buddha nature. They simply help us notice what was always already present. Consider this log. Kensho continued, picking up a piece of seasoned oak and turning it slowly in his weathered hands. Does this wood contain fire, or does fire somehow enter the wood when we light it? The fire was always present as potential, waiting for the right conditions to reveal itself. In the same way, your enlightenment is not something you must acquire through special practices. It is the very awareness with which you approach each task, each moment, each breath. As if to demonstrate his teaching, Kensho positioned the log on the splitting stump with careful attention, studying the grain pattern to determine exactly where to place his axe. His movements embodied complete presence, not hurried, not reluctant, but fully engaged with the immediate requirements of the task at hand. When he swung the axe, the motion flowed from his entire body rather than just his arms. The blade found the perfect spot, and the log split cleanly with a satisfying crack that seemed to ring with rightness. The two halves fell away from each other as naturally as flower petals opening to sunlight. "You see," Kensho said, gathering the split pieces. "When we work in harmony with the natural order, when we bring complete attention to what we are doing, even the simplest tasks become expressions of the same awareness that sits in meditation or contemplates profound teachings." Fashan picked up his axe once again, but this time with a different quality of attention. Instead of rushing to complete the work so he could return to real practice, he took time to examine the log before him. He noticed the patterns in the bark, the way the grain ran through the wood, the particular weight and density that would determine how the axe should fall. His next swing, while still lacking Kensho's effortless skill, landed much closer to the optimal spot. The log split partway through, requiring only a gentle tap to complete the separation. For the first time since beginning this assignment, Fashan felt a small spark of satisfaction at work well done. "Better," Kensho encouraged. "You are beginning to work with the wood rather than against it. Notice how different this feels from your first attempts. What has changed? Fashan paused to consider the question seriously. I suppose I am paying more attention to what I am actually doing instead of thinking about what else I could be doing. Instead of fighting with the logs, I am trying to understand how they want to split. Exactly. Kensho's face lit up with the joy of a teacher witnessing understanding dawn in a student's mind. And tell me, is this attention, this understanding different from the awareness you cultivate in meditation? Is this presence less valuable than the concentration you develop in formal practice? A profound silence settled over the woodpile as Fashan grappled with this question. Slowly, like clouds parting to reveal a mountain peak that had been hidden but never absent, understanding began to emerge in his consciousness. The awareness is the same, he said wonderingly. Whether I am sitting in meditation or chopping wood, whether I am studying a koan or examining the grain of a log, the same consciousness is present. The same attention that watches thoughts arise and pass away in meditation is watching the axe rise and fall here at the woodpile. The work continued throughout the morning, but for Fashan it had completely transformed from burden into opportunity. Each log became a teacher, each swing of the axe a moment of practice. He began to notice subtle things he had missed before, how his breathing naturally synchronized with the rhythm of his work, how his body found more efficient movements when his mind stopped interfering with unnecessary tension and hurry. By midday, when the temple bell rang, calling the community to mealtime, Fashan and Kensho had completed their quota of split wood. But more importantly, Fashan had experienced his first taste of what the old masters meant when they spoke of ordinary mind being the way. Brother Sonam, listening to this familiar yet always fresh teaching, felt his own understanding deepen as Master Jizang's story unfolded. His early morning duty of ringing the monastery bell had become one of his most treasured practices, each toll an opportunity to offer the sound as a gift to all beings throughout the mountain valleys. During the noon meal, taken in traditional silence, Fashan found his awareness naturally settling into the same quality of presence he had discovered at the woodpile. Each bite of simple barley and vegetables became an opportunity for complete attention, each sip of tea a moment of gratitude for the many hands and forces that had brought this nourishment to his bowl. After the meal, Master Yunmen Aproa chid his scholarly student with eyes twinkling with understanding. How did you find your meditation practice this morning, Brother Fashan? The question initially confused the young monk, since he had spent the morning chopping wood rather than sitting in formal meditation. But as he considered the master's words more deeply, the wisdom behind them began to reveal itself. Master, Fashan replied slowly, I am beginning to understand that my meditation practice this morning was chopping wood. I discovered that the same awareness I cultivate on my meditation cushion can be brought to any activity when I approach it with complete presence and attention. Very good, Master Yunmen nodded approvingly. And what about this afternoon? Will you continue your meditation practice? Yes, Master. This afternoon, my meditation practice will be whatever task needs to be completed. Carrying water, sweeping floors, preparing vegetables for tonight's meal. I am learning that enlightenment is not something separate from ordinary life, but the very foundation from which ordinary life arises. Master Yunmen's smile carried the warmth of recognition between teacher and student, the joy that arises when understanding is transmitted not through words, but through direct experience. Now, you are beginning to understand why we say that. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities remain the same, but the one who performs them is completely transformed. From that day forward, Fashan approached every aspect of monastery life as an opportunity for spiritual practice. When assigned to kitchen duty, he found meditation in the careful washing of vegetables, discovering how complete attention to simple tasks could reveal profound truths about the interconnectedness of all life. When working in the temple gardens, he learned to see each plant as a teacher, offering lessons about patience, growth, and the natural unfolding of potential. Weeding became an exercise in discrimination, learning to distinguish between what supported growth and what hindered it, both in the garden and in his own consciousness. Even the most mundane tasks, sweeping floors, cleaning bathrooms, mending robes, became opportunities to practice the same presence and awareness that formal meditation had taught him to cultivate. He discovered that enlightenment was not a special state to be achieved, but a natural way of being that could be expressed through any activity performed with complete sincerity and attention. Young novice Tenzin felt a profound shift in his understanding as Master Jizang's story reached this point. His own frustrations with daily work assignments suddenly appeared in a completely different light, revealing themselves not as obstacles to spiritual development, but as perfectly designed opportunities for the very growth he had been seeking. Years later, when Fashan had become a teacher himself, students would often ask him about the secret of his profound peace and obvious wisdom. His response became legendary throughout the region. Before I understood the way, I chopped wood to get it over with so I could meditate. Now I chop wood to chop wood, and every stroke of the axe is perfect meditation. When asked to elaborate on this teaching, Fashan would often share the lesson that Brother Kensho had taught him that transformative morning at the woodpile. Enlightenment is not something you achieve during special moments of insight. It is the very awareness with which you meet each ordinary moment, the presence you bring to whatever activity life presents to you. The wood teaches patience and attention. The water teaches flow and adaptation. The floors teach humility and service. Every task in the monastery is designed not to distract from spiritual practice, but to provide exactly the conditions needed for spiritual growth. When you understand this, then your whole life becomes your meditation hall, and every moment becomes an opportunity for awakening. As Master Jizang's tale drew toward its close, the monastery seemed to settle even more deeply into the mountain's embrace. The simple activities that filled each day here, the very tasks that many of the listening community performed daily, suddenly revealed themselves as precious opportunities rather than necessary burdens. Dear friends, Master Jizang concluded softly, Fashan's story reminds us that the spiritual path is not separate from ordinary life, but hidden within it like fire hidden within wood. Every task we perform here at Sacred Mountain Monastery, from the grandest ceremony to the simplest chore, offers the same opportunity for awakening that Fashan discovered at the woodpile. When you rise tomorrow morning and begin your daily responsibilities, remember that you are not interrupting your spiritual practice to take care of mundane concerns. You are expressing your spiritual practice through the vehicle of whatever needs to be done. Your Buddha nature is equally present whether you are sitting in meditation or washing dishes, whether you are chanting sutras or shoveling snow. The secret is not to find special moments for enlightenment, but to bring enlightened awareness to every moment, special or ordinary. Chop wood, carry water, but chop and carry with the complete presence that recognizes each action as sacred, each moment as pregnant with infinite possibility. As you prepare for sleep tonight, perhaps you can appreciate the profound ordinariness of breathing. This simple, essential activity that continues whether you pay attention to it or not. Like chopping wood or carrying water, breathing requires no special skill or understanding. Yet, when met with complete presence, it reveals itself as one of the most intimate and immediate gateways to the awakened awareness that is your true nature. The monastery fell into the deepest silence, yet experienced this evening each person present touched by the recognition that their own daily life was not separate from their spiritual aspirations, but the very field within which those aspirations could be most fully realized. Outside, the mountain wind continued its eternal work of shaping stone and carrying snow, performing its ancient duties with the same natural presence that Master Yunmen's students had learned to bring to their own simple tasks. In this ongoing display of enlightened activity, the truth of Fashan's teaching lived and breathed, offering its wordless instruction to anyone ready to receive the gift of their own ordinary, extraordinary life. As the final echoes of Master Jizang's teaching about Fashan and the woodpile settled into the monastery's ancient stones, a profound stillness descended upon the assembled community. The butter lamps flickered with renewed intensity, their golden flames creating dancing shadows that seemed to breathe life into the carved lotus petals adorning the weathered walls. Outside, the mountain wind had shifted, bringing with it the promise of fresh snow and the crystalline clarity that comes with deep winter nights in the high peaks. Master Jizang remained motionless on his meditation cushion, his weathered hands resting peacefully in his lap like fallen leaves that had found their natural resting place. His eyes, deep as mountain tarns, reflected the lamplight with the serene awareness of one who had spent decades discovering profound truths hidden within the most ordinary circumstances. The silence that surrounded him was not empty, but pregnant with possibility, like the pause between heartbeats or the moment before dawn breaks over distant peaks. "My beloved friends," his voice emerged from this pregnant stillness with the gentle authority of ancient streams flowing toward the sea. "Tonight, we have journeyed together through tales of seeking and finding, of effort and surrender, of discovering that the very activities we thought were distractions from spiritual practice are themselves the perfect vehicles for awakening. Now, let me share with you a story that reveals how even our most challenging emotions and difficult encounters can become doorways to the deepest understanding." Young novice Tenzin felt a particular stirring of interest at these words. His own time at the monastery had been marked by moments of frustration and conflict, times when his expectations clashed with reality, when his carefully constructed sense of how things should be was disrupted by the unexpected actions of others or the stubborn refusal of circumstances to conform to his wishes. Long ago, in the river valleys of ancient China, where morning mists rise like incense from waters that have flowed unchanged for millennia, there lived a Zen monk whose dedication to meditation was renowned throughout the region. Master Huik was known for his unwavering commitment to formal practice, rising each day before dawn to sit in perfect stillness for hours, studying the most challenging koans with scholarly precision and maintaining a level of concentration that impressed even the most experienced teachers. Brother Karma, listening from his place near the monastery's ancient wooden pillar, felt an immediate resonance with this description. His own early years of practice had been characterized by similar intensity, similar dedication to formal meditation that sometimes bordered on the obsessive. Master Huike's temple nestled among bamboo groves beside a wide river that reflected sky like polished mirror, housed a community of dedicated practitioners who followed rigorous schedules of meditation study and ceremonial observance. Yet, despite this devotion to traditional forms, or perhaps because of it, the temple atmosphere sometimes grew tense with the subtle competitiveness that can arise when spiritual seekers become too attached to their practices and achievements. The river that flowed past the temple served multiple purposes for the community, providing fresh water for daily needs, enabling transportation to nearby villages for necessary supplies, and offering a peaceful setting for walking meditation along its willow-lined banks. Master Huki had developed a particular fondness for taking a small boat to the center of this river during the early morning hours when mist hung low over the water and the world seemed suspended between sleeping and waking. Master Jizang gestured toward the monastery windows where moonlight streamed through to create patterns of silver and shadow on the worn wooden floors. Picture, if you will, such a morning. The air crisp with autumn chill, the water so still it perfectly mirrors the pink and gold clouds of dawn, the silence so complete that each gentle lap of water against the boat's hull sounds like a whispered teaching from the depths of existence itself. On one such morning, Master Huki rowed his simple wooden boat to the exact center of the river where the current was gentle and the depth sufficient to anchor securely. He had chosen this spot with careful consideration, far enough from shore to avoid distraction from temple activities, positioned where the morning sun would warm his back as it rose above the eastern hills, surrounded by water that seemed to amplify the profound stillness he sought to cultivate in meditation. As was his custom, Master Huik arranged his sitting cushion in the bottom of the boat with meticulous attention to detail. His posture, refined through years of disciplined practice, embodied the perfect balance of alertness and relaxation that characterizes authentic meditation. His breathing settled into the natural rhythm that emerges when the mind releases its grip on constant activity and allows awareness to rest in its own inherent spaciousness. Young novice Dolma, who often struggled with restlessness during her own meditation periods, found herself drawn deeply into Master J. Itzang's description. She could almost feel the gentle rocking of the boat, the way water creates a natural cradle that seems to support deeper states of tranquility than those achieved on solid ground. For nearly 2 hours, Master Huik sat in perfect stillness at the center of the flowing river. His meditation had reached that quality of profound absorption where the boundary between meditator and meditation dissolves, where awareness rests in itself without grasping or pushing away, where the very effort to meditate is replaced by the natural state of being that needs no improvement or adjustment. It was precisely in this moment of deepest peace that Master Huik felt a sudden jolt as another boat collided with his own. The impact was not violent, but it was unexpected and jarring. like being awakened from the most profound sleep by an unwelcome sound. The careful balance he had cultivated over hours of patient sitting was instantly disrupted. His meditation cushion shifted beneath him, and his state of serene absorption shattered like a reflection broken by thrown stones. His first instinct was to maintain the equanimity he had been cultivating, to treat this interruption as simply another arising and passing away in the field of awareness. He kept his eyes closed and attempted to settle back into the depth of concentration he had achieved. But something in the quality of the collision suggested carelessness or even deliberate disturbance, and he felt a small flame of irritation beginning to kindle in his chest. The wind outside the monastery shifted direction, causing the prayer flags to snap more vigorously against their poles. The sound seemed to punctuate Master Jizang's narrative, adding an element of immediacy that drew his listeners even more deeply into the ancient story. A few moments later, as Master Huik was working to re-establish his meditative absorption, he felt another bump, this one even more pronounced than the first. The collision rocked his boat more significantly, causing water to splash over the sides and thoroughly disrupting any possibility of returning to his previous state of concentration. The flame of irritation that had been merely smoldering now began to burn more brightly, fed by thoughts about inconsiderate boaters who had no respect for serious spiritual practice. When a third collision occurred, this one strong enough to nearly knock him from his sitting position, Master Huik's carefully cultivated equanimity finally gave way to righteous indignation. His eyes snapped open, his face flushed with anger that had been building over the course of these repeated disturbances, and he prepared to deliver a stern lecture about proper river etiquette to whoever was responsible for this outrageous disruption of his meditation practice. Brother Sonam, remembering his own moments of frustrated righteousness during his early years at the monastery, felt his heart rate quicken as he anticipated the climactic moment of Master Jizang's tale. There was something universally recognizable about the progression from minor annoyance to full-blown anger, the way small irritations could accumulate until they overwhelmed even the most dedicated practitioner's composure. "How dare you!" Master Huik was prepared to shout as his eyes opened and focused on the source of his disruption. "Can you not see that someone is trying to meditate here? Do you have no consideration for others who seek peace and quiet on this river? Where is your respect for spiritual practice and common courtesy?" But as his vision cleared and his attention focused on the offending vessel, Master Huik's prepared tirade died unspoken in his throat. Floating beside his boat, bumping gently against its side in the morning current, was an old wooden boat that had obviously broken free from its mooring somewhere upstream. The boat was completely empty. No oars, no occupant, no one to blame or lecture or direct his accumulated frustration toward. In that moment of recognition, the moment when expected confrontation dissolved into the simple reality of an empty boat following the natural flow of current and wind, something profound shifted in Master Huik's understanding. The anger that had felt so justified, so appropriate to the circumstances, suddenly revealed itself as completely internal, a fire that had been burning within his own consciousness and merely seeking an external object on which to focus its flames. Master Jizang's voice grew softer now, more intimate, drawing his listeners into the very heart of the teaching. The monastery seemed to hold its breath as if the ancient walls themselves were eager to hear once again this timeless lesson about the nature of emotional reactivity and the path to genuine freedom. Sitting there in his boat with an empty vessel bobbing beside him, Master Huik experienced what could only be described as a moment of profound enlightenment. Not the gradual dawn of understanding that comes through years of study and practice, but the sudden lightning flash of recognition that illuminates the entire landscape of consciousness in a single instant. He saw clearly that the empty boat had done nothing wrong. It was simply following the natural laws of water and wind, moving as all things move when not interfered with by conscious intention. The boat had no malice, no disrespect, no awareness of having disturbed anyone's meditation. It was as innocent as a falling leaf or a passing cloud, part of the natural flow of existence that includes both stillness and movement, both solitude and interruption. More importantly, Master Huik recognized that his anger had never actually been caused by the boat at all. The collision was simply an event, neutral in itself, neither good nor bad, until filtered through the lens of his own expectations and preferences. The boat had not made him angry. It had simply provided an opportunity for anger that was already present within him to manifest and be recognized. This recognition went even deeper as Master Huik continued to contemplate the empty boat floating peacefully beside him. He began to see that not only was the boat empty of any intention to harm or disturb, but that in the deepest sense all beings he encountered were like empty boats, following the complex currents of their conditioning, their circumstances, their own inner weather patterns without the kind of conscious control over their actions that would justify taking their behavior personally. Young novice Tenzin felt a profound stirring of understanding as this teaching unfolded. How many times had he felt hurt or angry when other people acted in ways that conflicted with his expectations, never considering that they too might be following currents beyond their immediate awareness or control. Master Huika remained on the river for the rest of that morning, but his meditation had completely transformed. In all Dam Ed of seeking the profound absorption he had previously cultivated, he found himself practicing a new kind of awareness, one that included rather than excluded whatever arose in his experience. When other boats passed by, whether empty or occupied, he met them with curiosity rather than irritation, recognizing each encounter as an opportunity to practice the understanding he had just discovered. When he finally returned to shore and rejoined the temple community for the midday meal, his fellow monks immediately noticed a change in his demeanor. The subtle tension that had always characterized his intense dedication to formal practice had been replaced by a quality of relaxed alertness, a way of being that seemed to embrace whatever circumstances arose without losing its essential tranquility. During the meal taken in traditional silence, one of the younger monks accidentally knocked over his teacup, spilling its contents across the low table where several community members were seated. Master Huika watched with fascination as his own mind began its familiar process of forming judgments about carelessness and lack of mindfulness, but now he could also see these reactions as simply more empty boats floating through the river of consciousness. Instead of frowning at the disturbance or feeling irritated by the disruption of the meal's peaceful atmosphere, Master Huik found himself smiling with genuine compassion. He reached for a cloth to help clean up the spill, seeing in this small accident the same innocent movement of causes and conditions that had characterized his encounter with the empty boat on the river.
No,
The monastery cat Dharma, who had been sleeping peacefully near the altar throughout the evening's teachings, suddenly stretched and resettled herself with a soft purr. Master Jizang smiled at this perfect demonstration of the natural ease he was describing, the way awakened awareness moves through life without resistance or grasping. Word of Master Huik's transformation spread quickly through the temple community, not because he spoke about his experience, but because his very presence had become a teaching. Students began to notice how he met both pleasant and unpleasant circumstances with the same quality of open awareness, how he responded to praise and criticism with equal equanimity, how he seemed to have discovered a way of being that was simultaneously deeply engaged with life, yet not thrown off balance by its inevitable ups and downs. When asked by his teacher about the change that had occurred, Master Huik simply replied, "I have learned that everyone I meet is an empty boat, following currents they do not always understand. When I remember this, I am free to respond with compassion rather than react with judgment. When I forget this, I suffer until I remember again." This simple explanation became a foundation for Master Huik's subsequent teaching when he eventually became a master himself. Students would come to him, struggling with anger, hurt feelings, frustration with difficult people in their lives, and he would share the story of his encounter with the empty boat on the river. "Consider," he would say to his students, "that the person who has hurt or angered you is like an empty boat that has collided with yours. They are following currents of their own conditioning, their own pain, their own limited understanding. They are not empty of Buddha nature. That can never be lost or damaged. But they are empty of the kind of conscious control over their actions that would justify taking their behavior as a personal attack on you." Brother Karma felt tears gathering in his eyes as he recognized his own journey reflected in this teaching. His years as a merchant had been filled with angry reactions to competitors, difficult customers, unreliable suppliers, all of whom he now could see as empty boats following the complex currents of their own circumstances and conditioning. Master Huiki would continue, "This does not mean we become passive or fail to respond appropriately to harmful behavior. Just as a skilled boater navigates around empty boats drifting in the current, we can take skillful action to protect ourselves and others while maintaining compassion for those who act from ignorance or pain. The difference is that we respond from wisdom rather than react from wounded ego. When you truly understand that others are empty boats, you become an empty boat yourself, empty of the defensiveness and reactivity that cause so much suffering, empty of the need to take everything personally, empty of the illusion that you can control how others behave. And when you are empty in this way, paradoxically, you become full of compassion, full of wisdom, full of the natural responsiveness that knows exactly how to meet each situation with appropriate action." Years later, Master Huik's teaching about empty boats became one of the most beloved and practical instructions in his lineage. Students would remind each other during moments of interpersonal difficulty, "Remember the empty boat." This simple phrase served as a doorway back to the understanding that Master Huike had discovered on the river, that taking things personally is optional, that most of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from the stories we tell ourselves about what happens to us. Master Jizang gestured toward the monastery's simple altar, where offerings of mountain flowers rested before the jade Buddha statue. Notice how our Buddha statue neither takes credit when people offer flowers, nor takes offense when no offerings are made. It embodies the quality of emptiness that Master Huike discovered, present and responsive to whatever arises, yet not personally invested in whether circumstances unfold according to preference or aversion. The empty boat teaching reminds us that this same quality of enlightened responsiveness is available to each of us in every moment of interpersonal encounter. When someone cuts us off in traffic, they are an empty boat following the currents of their hurry and stress. When a family member speaks harshly, they are an empty boat caught in the winds of their own pain or fear. When a colleague takes credit for our work, they are an empty boat driven by the tides of their own insecurity or ambition. Young novice Dolma found herself thinking of her own family, particularly her younger brother, whose self-centered behavior had been a source of frustration for years. Suddenly, she could see him as an empty boat following the currents of his own youth and inexperience, and she felt her heart opening with a compassion she had never before been able to access. This teaching does not ask us to become doormats or to fail to establish appropriate boundaries when necessary. Rather, it invites us to respond to difficult situations from a place of understanding rather than react from a place of wounded persona identity. We can say no to harmful behavior, we can protect ourselves and others, we can work to change unjust systems, all while maintaining the recognition that those who cause harm are themselves caught in currents of ignorance and suffering. Master Huik used to say that the ultimate goal of spiritual practice is not to never encounter empty boats, but to become so skilled at navigating the river of life that each collision becomes an opportunity for deeper understanding rather than a source of suffering. Each bump, each unexpected encounter, each moment when life fails to meet our expectations becomes a chance to practice the compassion and wisdom that are our deepest nature. He would often remind his students, the river of life is full of empty boats, some drifting aimlessly, some following currents too strong for them to resist, some breaking free from moorings they never chose. Your job is not to eliminate these boats or to control their movement, but to navigate skillfully among them while maintaining your own direction and purpose. As Master Jizang's tale drew toward its close, the monastery seemed to settle even more deeply into the mountain's embrace. The wind outside had grown gentler, and the prayer flags rustled softly like whispered prayers ascending toward the star-filled sky. Dear ones, Master Jizang concluded with infinite tenderness, Master Huik's story reminds us that most of our interpersonal suffering comes from taking personally what was never personal to begin with. The person who angers us is following currents we cannot see, driven by winds we do not understand, carrying cargo of pain or fear or confusion that has nothing to do with us personally. When we remember that others are empty boats, we become empty boats ourselves, empty of the need to be right, empty of the compulsion to control, empty of the illusion that our worth depends on how others treat us. And in this emptiness, we discover the fullness of unconditional love and unlimited responsiveness. As you prepare for sleep tonight, perhaps you can practice seeing yourself as an empty boat floating peacefully on the vast river of existence. Let your breath flow like gentle currents, carrying away any tension or resistance from the day's encounters. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across the sky of awareness, appearing and disappearing, without disturbing the essential stillness that you are. And if you find your mind returning to difficult interactions from today or previous days, see if you can remember Master Huik's teaching. The person who frustrated or hurt you was an empty boat, following currents beyond their control. Your anger or pain was real, but it was not caused by them. It was revealed by them, brought to the surface like sediment stirred up by passing boats, so that it could be seen clearly and ultimately released. Rest tonight in the understanding that you too are an empty boat, empty of all the stories that make suffering seem necessary, empty of all the identities that make defensiveness seem justified, empty of all the fears that make love seem dangerous. In this sacred emptiness, may you find the profound fullness of your own Buddha nature, as vast and serene as the night sky that holds all the stars without being disturbed by their coming and going. The monastery fell into the deepest silence, yet experienced this evening each person present touched by the recognition of how often they had mistaken empty boats for personal enemies, how frequently they had suffered unnecessarily by taking the random collisions of life as intentional affronts to their dignity or worth. Outside, the real river of mountain wind continued its eternal flow around the monastery walls, carrying the scents of pine and snow, the whispered teachings of ancient peaks, the wordless wisdom that flows endlessly through all who learn to receive it without grasping to let it move through them without obstruction, like the empty boats carried by the infinite current of existence itself. As the final echoes of tonight's ancient tales settle into the sacred silence of Sacred Mountain Monastery, Master Jizang's gentle voice carries the wisdom of ages. Dear ones, the stories we have shared, young Toyo's discovery, Chiono's enlightenment, Fa Shan's transformation, and Huike's understanding, all point to the same timeless truth. The peace you seek is already here. The wisdom you long for already dwells within you. The Buddha lamps flicker softly as snow continues its eternal dance outside the windows. Each flake falls with perfect presence, teaching without words about the beauty of simply being what you are when you are where you are. As you prepare for sleep tonight, let your breathing become like the gentle mountain wind, natural, effortless, requiring no control or improvement. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across the vast sky of awareness, appearing and disappearing without disturbing our essential stillness. Remember young Toyo's lesson: the sound of one hand clapping is the silence from which all sounds arise. Rest in that pregnant silence. Remember Chiono's teaching: when all the buckets break and all the reflected moons disappear, the true light shines unobstructed. Be that light. Remember Fa Shan's discovery: every breath is sacred work, every heartbeat is perfect meditation. Simply breathe, simply be. If worries arise, treat them as empty boats drifting through the river of consciousness. They are not your enemies, but temporary visitors with no power to disturb your deeper peace. Let them pass like waves on water, leaving no trace. Sleep now, beloved friends, in the understanding that your Buddha nature watches over you through the night. Rest in the same awareness that illuminates both sleeping and waking, both mountain peaks and valleys, both today's seeking and tomorrow's finding. May your dreams be filled with the peace of ancient mountains. May your rest be deep as still forest pools. May you wake tomorrow with the fresh wonder of first snowfall and the gentle wisdom of stones worn smooth by countless seasons. The monastery settles into profound silence as the community prepares for rest. Outside, the mountain wind carries their peaceful intentions across the sleeping valleys below, a silent blessing extending from this sacred refuge to all beings everywhere. Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Svaha. Gone, 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 beyond, awakened. Sleep well, dear ones, sleep in peace.